It's gonna be a good one.
It's gonna be a good one.
Definitely a different type of process.
Cut down or freeze up.
Being a coach's son.
Jackson, of course, they keep retooling. One stolen base, a hit by pitch. Oh my goodness.
Thumbs up. That means it's good to go.
Love it.
Shake and bake.
That's it. Hello, everyone. Welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for this edition of YBMcast, powered by Game 7 Baseball, Game7Baseball.com. Exactly. That's the way we roll around here. Game 7 Baseball getting ready to start this weekend. Going to be down at Branson for the Shamrock Shootout. Yesterday, go take a look. We talked with Dave Penning. Had a great conversation, getting ready to roll there. We got a lot of stuff going on. We announced our Super 7 Scholarship Award winner from last year, from 2024 season. A great young man. Really enjoyed talking to him. His name is Gunnar Larner. And I'm going to tell you, folks, this kid is a player to watch. He's an Illinois kid, goes to small Class 2 school in Illinois out of Maroa, Illinois. He goes to Maroa Forsyth, which is between, I think it's Decatur and like Springfield, in that on 51 there, a little small town. You were looking at that, right? Am I correct in that?
I was looking at that.
Yeah.
I still don't know where it's at. I'm sure there's an exit somewhere heading that direction.
So, and he plays for the St. Louis Legacy. So this young man is one to watch. We're gonna be we got an interview working up with him here in the not too distant future. But I want to give some love to some of the kids that won the top award, our Player of the Game award throughout the season. Here's another kid, a lefty pitcher, Carter Pearson out of Mexico, Missouri, going to Mexico High School 2027, plays for Canes baseball. This is a kid, I think you might have seen him already, Kevin, at maybe because he is in the
Prep baseball
baseball deal there, but it was probably just in maybe one of your club deals, I think, maybe something like that. So, because his name, it was there, but this young man pitches very well. He's got that bulldog mentality. Really like him on the mound there. Connor Casella, Wentzville, Missouri, going to Liberty High School, plays for GBA. Another kid, kind of plays a little bit everywhere. He was a catcher, long, lanky kid. Really enjoyed watching him play. Going to be at Liberty. We're going to see him in the GAC, so I like that. The next kid here, in my opinion, this is the one I'm excited about. Mr. David Miller out of Potosi, Missouri. Plays for the Mineral Area Athletics. Goes to Potosi High School. This young man was 14 years old and started varsity football as a freshman, 14 years old, varsity football freshman at Potosi High School. You know, I understand it's Potosi, probably Class 3, somewhere in there, maybe Class 2. I don't care. I don't care, though. You're 14 years old starting as the quarterback on a varsity football team. That means you're for real.
You've got some physical capabilities in a big way.
Right? They don't just do that.
No.
Playing against 18-year-olds, it's like a freshman walking into college and being able to have that ability to be an impact right away. I think about it the same way as far as context goes. And I mean, there's some big boys,
Ooh.
no matter what level you're in. So I would hate to get tackled by one of them.
No.
He is just another type of athlete. I really enjoyed it. I was telling Shane before we started that when we saw him out there at the tournament, we're at the WAC, which the fences are 325. You know, it's a 13-year-old hitting a home run out of the park. 13 years old hitting bombs like that. That's a pretty good poke.
Still got to connect, even if we have our weapons of mass destruction.
I got a sweet spot. Square it up.
Still a poke. 325 is a shot. What I love about what your list here, that's a lot of small town folks,
right?
And we're seeing it in some of our rankings that are coming out. You know, our rankings, and then some of the state, some of these players that you're seeing. these small town athletes are showcasing well.
Yes.
When they're getting out there. So
I'm sorry, I did this and I got excited about this, and I'm going to stop just for a moment, and I'm going to introduce our panel to the folks. That was I do that. I get excited. I'm like,
I saw the outline. I was like,
it's kind of like, remember, piece of candy. Piece of candy.
I was like, I thought we were going to talk about ourselves for a minute.
Yeah. So let me do this. I'm going to stop. Joining us via our Prime Sports Midwest call link for the first time from Metro Sports MOKAN, Brennan Knabe. Boy, I messed it up the first time. And I appreciate you sending me the phonetic spelling of that, bro.
This is not my first rodeo, unfortunately.
Tell the folks a little bit about yourself, Brennan.
Yeah, I'm a student at the University of Missouri in the journalism school here. We started Metro Sports. It was just Metro Sports KC at first with two of my friends in high school. This is my 5th year covering high school baseball in Missouri and Kansas. I started off with a company called 810 Varsity when I was 16 years old. But yeah, this is it's been one of my greater joys in life is to cover high school baseball in this area. So much talent, and honored to be with you guys today.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time. We do appreciate it. And as always, the guru himself, Mr. Kevin Moulder, Prep Baseball. How we doing, buddy?
Doing great. Feels like baseball season this week with this weather, and I'm hoping this isn't a tease and we get back to regular Missouri spring weather as soon as high school baseball starts.
It'd be nice.
It's 100% a tease. You know that. I was talking to some of the high school coaches in the area, and they were like, could we just postpone tryouts just a week later, with so many coaches having to go inside the first 3 days of tryouts with rain and then facilities? Because I didn't know this, but boys have volleyball in most of our GAC schools now that are also in the spring. So they're taking up small gym space. So teams were going at like 7 o'clock at night to have tryouts out in our neck of the woods. So that was pretty wild. But I'm with you, Kevin. I as a hunter, I love the cold, but the season's over, so I'm ready for this.
Yes. And it was nice. I was at the ballpark yesterday afternoon, just watching baseball, short sleeve shirt, smelling the grass, smelling the dirt. I might sneeze a couple times. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
It was nice. And to my right, the far right, we're starting. I got my 3-4 hitters over here.
Let's go.
Right, from Premier Hitting Development, Mr. Shane Eames, and the Hitting Zone, Mitchy the Kid Thomas.
Let's go. I'm glad I'm the 4-hitter because I feel like you're faster than me.
Yeah.
I
Table setter, guy who eats. I mean, I'll set it up. That's fine with me.
He might still hit a baseball further than me, though.
Oh, mercy.
His list of studs that he's got right now making.
They're banging it pretty good right now.
Yeah, they're doing well.
He's got to show you that the kid, the playing with the Rangers, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He just showed me this video. The noise, the sound off this bat was just like, oh, it makes you go, oh.
It was loud.
It was loud.
There's one guy which I was going to call him his last name, but I'll call him Brennan because that's easier to say. And Jack Caglione right now, the things that he's doing down in spring training. If you don't watch much Kansas City baseball, that man, he's already got 3 or 4 bombs. Mm-hmm. He probably won't break big league camp or head to Kansas City this year, but 114, 115 just hitting baseballs very far, very hard. It is a young man that I think is a player to watch.
Big time.
And I know that we're talking about some kids, but man, he started out at this high school level, getting ranked, winning state championships and providing for his team. So watch that man play baseball.
Mm-hmm. Or what's his name?
Jack Caglione.
Spring training.
Yep. He's a dude. Like a dude of dudes. I don't even know. What else do you call it? Is there something bigger than that?
Dude.
The Duke of Dudes?
Wow.
I don't know. We're making crap up now, man.
You got to watch him hit a baseball.
All right.
Or throw one. Still throw 100.
Right.
I'm going to finish this up real quick, and we're going to get to our rankings, folks. Brennan, kid in your neck of the woods, Noah Schwartz, Jeff City High School, catcher, third baseman. He was playing with the Columbia Aces. I think he's with the U.S. Nationals / Warriors now over there. Another kid, solid. He's built like a freight train and plays like that too. Hits the ball hard. These are names that I think are, and Jeff City, they've got some guys this year, right? They could be a team that, we'll see what happens.
Right.
But I think they could be a team that could surprise some people. But here's a few other names, just some kids we saw. Briar Beal playing with Midland. Dane Bremer's another one. He was with the Columbia Aces. I like this kid a lot. I love his mentality. Jackson Creedy with Elite One Athletics. He's a Columbia kid there. Luke Whitty was also with Midland. He's a local here. Sean O'Neill with the Missouri Gators. Kyler Reno, you know who that is, U.S. Prime. Grady Mahurin with Bullpen Baseball. Bullpen is a Southwest Missouri team. Braylon Sparrow, the Neoga Chiefs. Does anybody know where Neoga is?
Not a clue.
It's Illinois.
Wow.
Is it close to that other town?
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, Neoga. So I love that.
Say that.
I'm telling you. You better not trip on that one.
So we've seen some kids from the other parts. So that's just those names, kids to watch. Great stuff. We're gonna get interview with some of these kids, especially with Gunnar Larner. Looking forward to that coming up. All right, let's get to the main event here. High school baseball, Class 6. Our top 20 reveal here. We're going to start at the bottom as we are wanting to do. Go backwards, work up. At number 20, gentlemen, Oakville. 17-12 last year. Head coach Rich Sturm, Adam Kilburn, Gabe Hulsing, Jack Workowitz. Those two arms as seniors. CJ Lake Jr. We'll start with you, Kevin.
A lot of talent. There's definitely enough talent on this roster for them to have a strong argument to be ranked higher for sure. You guys know it all starts with pitching, and they have this in spades, I would say. They have some true aces. A lot of this is going to depend on, where they're at. Adam Kilburn, the senior, going to Tennessee. CJ Lake is taking a massive jump. He's been up to 94 this winter, and also is, one of the better power bats, I would say, in the area. And then they have secondary. I don't even want to call them secondary arms. They would be aces on other teams. Jack Workowicz, the lefty, going to Lindenwood. Adams, the Henley, is a big 6'4" left-hander. So they got a lot of depth. Now they got to just put it all together. So plenty of talent. No, they won't have a shortage of pitching, which is obviously the key ingredient to having a good season, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and I think Oakville, in my opinion, is my sleeper pick to make a loud push for a playoff run. The offense is probably going to be the biggest question mark. They've had to. They've had to kind of scratch and scrape a little bit here and there, but if they can put up some runs, I don't think with that pitching staff that they can't be a formidable opponent on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I agree. I got a chance to talk a little bit with Coach Sturm. We didn't get him on a show, but just scheduling and things of that nature. But that was a lot of the things. They got some pieces offensively. Can they do enough? Mm-hmm. Pitching and defense, baby.
Right.
It's going to keep you in ball games. They were 17-12. A lot of experience coming back. I put them at 20 just for the fact that it's unproven. Go prove it. Let's
Absolutely.
see. I'll push you up a little higher. Let's see what you can do, this year, and we'll go from there. That's what I like. So that's Oakville right there. They lost in the semifinal to Seckman last year in District 1. And not to mention, here's the other thing, getting past that district, good luck with that. Right?
It's loaded.
I mean, if District 1 stays the same, guys, it's Seckman, it's Parkway South, it's Fox, it's Jackson.
Yeah.
You might as well just flip a coin.
Flip it.
I mean, as far as that's concerned, that's just the way I look at that. 19. Liberty North has been dominating high school baseball in the state for the past, 4 years? I've got him here at 19. Jimmy Oguntuwansi. I know I probably butchered that, but that's as close as I'm going to get. I had trouble pronouncing. Is it pretty close?
Oguntuwase is what we've heard. He plays basketball at North as well, and he's been a guy who's been a PA announcer's nightmare this year.
I'd have called him Jimmy O.
Yeah.
I'd have given him a hockey name.
It was tough calling it last year. We went down and called a game at Liberty North, and I was like, I have no clue. Somebody
Jimmy O
help.
rolls right off the tongue well.
Yeah.
Just
It's
Jimmy
hard.
O.
You got to keep saying it over and over. Jacob Bell, Logan Moran, some seniors. Brennan, talk to us about Coach Jake Bradshaw and this team coming into the year.
Well, just like you mentioned, I mean, this team is really going through a changing of the guard, so to speak. 4 years of really consistent lineups from them that featured the likes of Bo Jonas and guys like that who are now, moved on. Jimmy O was quite, I believe he played middle infield for them out last year, played a little bit of the outfield. Excellent base runner, good contact bat, gets on base. Jake Bradshaw is going to be in his first year as head coach, but he's a guy that I think we can trust and believe in. He was known for being an assistant at Rockhurst and some of the things he did in the Van Johnson League as well. He's a guy who knows how to win, and the culture that kind of existed at Liberty North under Coach Stiegel will still remain. I think they've got a little bit to prove. I like where you've got him here. They're a team that will probably struggle a little bit in conference. They've with the way the Suburban has kind of realigned. There's a lot of really good teams in that conference that'll probably beat up on each other a little bit, but they're a team who nobody's going to want to play in the C6 D8 playoffs. Just like you mentioned with District 1, I think that's kind of the Kansas City equivalent is what you see in District 8 every year. So I think it'll be interesting for them. We'll find out a lot about them at the very beginning of the year. I'm not sure what the exact schedule for the PBR event that is at Creekside at the beginning of the year is, but I know they play Green Valley pretty early. Obviously, they'll have the series again with Blue Spring South. So two really interesting matchups for the early season will show us a lot about them.
Kevin, some players on that team that you're interested in there?
Yeah, that's a program that's never going to dip too far. Obviously, they were at a peak, riding guys that had been 3 and 4 year starters, and they had such a great run during their sophomore, junior, and senior years. Couple sophomores to keep an eye on, and I think there's going to be some opportunity for some young guys to play, which maybe wasn't there in years past due to all the veterans leadership there. But Evan Loftus is a sophomore to keep an eye on. He's going to have a big hand in their success if he can take a big step forward as a sophomore. And then Max Shepard is a sophomore outfielder. So I think there's going to be a lot of reliance on the younger talent if they're going to be a major player, like they have been the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, this area here, when you lose Trey Schneider, Bo Jonas, and then Tate McGuire the year before, I mean, these were guys that were just there, and it's like you couldn't beat them. It just was hard to beat them. So it'll be interesting to see. Up next, Rockbridge. We're staying there in the middle of the state. Coach Justin Tao's swan song, basically. He's retiring after this season. We got a chance to get him on this. It's kind of tough, because we got him on the show. We were able to do a coach's preview with him the first time, and he's retiring next year. So it's kind of, I was glad to do it. It was good.
Hey, he reached the pinnacle. He's hit the top, so he's just figured, hey.
Yeah, well,
Sure
if the pinnacle is Youth Baseball Midwest, we're in trouble. But I appreciate the sentiment, Kevin. That's nice of you to say. Let's talk about Rockbridge. Go ahead, Brennan. I love having you here. Rockbridge in the middle of that state there. This team, again, one of those right there. We don't know as much about it as maybe you. They're a solid team. They're coached well. What are we going to see out of Rockbridge?
Well, kind of similar to what Kevin said about Liberty North, is they're a team that's never going to fall too far. They're a 20-plus game winner, and I believe each of the last 10 seasons, or at least that's how it was put to me by Coach Tao. I got to watch them practice last year towards the end of the season. And just the way they run that program is very similar to the way you would run a machine. It's a well-oiled machine. Crew Norton and Cooper Sieber are two guys who returned from that group last year. That A, were impressive last year, but B, they were kind of clubhouse leaders last year, which you want to look for when you graduate a big senior class. I think they had 6, maybe 7 that graduated last year. It'll be interesting to see how they figure out pitching at the beginning of the year. They will be a pretty young group, but I do think that there's potential for them to be another 25, 26-ish win team. I think it'll be a lot on the back of what that CMAC schedule looks like for them. The CMAC, I think, has kind of grown closer to them. Hickman and Jeff City are going to be a little bit better than maybe they have been in years past. Battle has is a little top heavy, but they've got quite a bit of talent. And then there's always Camdenton down south, the new addition to the CMAC conference this year. So I think that there's some potential to get beat up in that slog of a conference schedule, playing Tolton as well, I think, down the stretch. So it could be a year where they kind of teeter in that 18 to 20 range for the majority of the year.
It's going to be one play that's going to lead to some of these changes being an 18 or 20 game winner to a 26 game winner because they're going to be so close. And what some of the things that I like about this, and they talked about it already, is kind of the youth. And that's why you're seeing them kind of ranked where they're at because they've been young. And so now these guys are getting their opportunities to shine. So, maybe that's why they're ranked where they're ranked because you're not sure because they haven't had the ability to prove themselves. Mm-hmm.
Well, they're in District 5. They lost to Grain Valley last year in the semifinal. Kevin, any other names that we're looking at here from Rockbridge?
Yeah, I would just like to say, and for my money, Coach Toe is one of the best coaches in the state, and so that is going to be a massive equalizer for them. He will have them prepared. He runs it a lot like when I go to a high school game there. When I go to a game there, you almost feel like you're watching a college game. The way he has them prepared and the way he operates, it's a fun place to go watch a high school baseball game. So I like where you have them. They might be down a tick in terms of talent, but with Siebert and Crew Norton there, they're going to be fine, and I'm sure they will have some young guys coming up as well to contribute.
There you go.
Culture.
Yeah, we talk about, and that's one thing Kevin's always talked about on the show for the last 3 years. Talk about programs, and I thought Brennan, when he said that's a well-oiled machine. It's the way they do it from freshmen on up. And these teams, that's why they have success. And coaches like Coach Tao, they understand what that means and how to get the most out of kids. Mm-hmm. And it shows with, as you said, here we got this team last year coming off 27 wins at 18. They had 27 wins last year. I don't care, man. It's hard to get 27 wins in a season. Simple as that. So, Grain Valley is up next at 17. Grain Valley, what was it? 2021, right, Kevin? State championships.
State, yeah.
Yeah. Here we are, 21-15. Head coach Brian Driscoll. We got Dennis Leonard, Max Snyder, Caden Crandall, some seniors to watch. What are we looking for here, Kevin?
Dennis Leonard's a legit arm heading to Crowder. That is a true ace in the state. Upper 80s up to 91. So in Green Valley has a pretty good pedigree. They're always hanging around. They're never, I would say, in our top 5 or whatnot, but they always seem to be right there. Always a tough out. So yeah, I look for that. And now that they have a true number 1 pitcher that's a senior, I like where you have them.
Yeah, because that was what happened to Fort Zumwalt West when Carson Milbrandt come in when West was making a run in that state championship game, and Milbrandt come in and just said, "It's over. Y'all have a good ride home." That's what it was, man, right? Am I wrong?
Dead on.
That's what it was, man. And I was glad because we all left the ballpark there about 1 a.m. that morning, I believe it was. Yes. That one was memorable. We'll leave that there. Brennan, what do you think about Green Valley, buddy?
I think that we're with what we're looking at right now, the Grand Valley, Rockbridge, Liberty North, little trio at the bottom of this list here. They're teams that every year are going to win the games that they're supposed to win, and then they're going to win a couple games where they might not be the favorite to win. They've got a pretty tough schedule this year. I think they should be fine in conference, especially with Dennis Leonard on the mound, as you mentioned. I think he was one of the more underrated pitchers in Kansas City last year. Max Snyder's a great bat at the beginning of the order. I think he'll be a guy that has a little bit to prove. I think he was a guy that didn't get quite the looks he might have deserved from our guys, from the media guys last year, but a very good player. Caden Crandall, he's going to be part of that upper leadership group of guys that I think will play really well. These guys, I think this is another really, really good pick. Having them in this spot, there's some teams that might have more talent than them, a little higher in the list. But they're a team that's probably going to, at the very least, sit between 20 and 17 for the majority of the year. They start the year off against Kearney, who should be a really good team in 5A. So that'll be on the 26th, just 2 weeks away at this point. A pretty good matchup that'll tell you probably what they're going to look like in big games for the rest of the year.
There you go. Kevin, sorry, Kevin. Shane, anything to add?
I've
Mitch?
got nothing.
Got nothing?
The only thing I got is with I went to Missouri Western, which is in St. Joe, Missouri.
Sure.
And so I got to experience obviously driving through Grain Valley and these areas, Liberty and stuff like that. And I still paid attention to high school sports back then because obviously we were recruiting in that area for baseball players. These teams, since I was at Missouri Western in 98 to 2001, have always been good. You always hear these names, and and we go back to the culture of the school, the programs, and I just sometimes wonder as a coach, like what is different from these smaller. I know that it's a 6A school, but I feel like it's still kind of outside of Kansas City. So I'm like, what is about these programs that just create this culture in the city versus things that we have in St. Louis? And I'm not knocking obviously our baseball in this area is pretty good still, but I feel like their youth level, it just breeds into the high school. I feel like it's like Texas football or, Texas.
Right. Well, they cultivate it early. I mean, they start, their youth programs. They've got a lot of feeder programs. I mean, it mirrors, like we'll talk about Jackson too today. I mean, it's just cultivation from the ground up at a very, very young age. And they've got good people at the head of what they're getting done.
Yeah. And
it trickles down. So, I mean,
and it's just replacing, like if somebody retires, they're replacing somebody that feeds the culture of the program, the school spirit, if you will. That's what I love about high school sports.
And they hire within too. So, I mean, they like to hire within the community and good baseball people, and it just continues to roll.
Yeah.
Kevin, you were going to say something there?
I was going to say there are some advantages to being in the bigger city, and there's some advantages to being in the smaller town, and and some weaknesses to both, and you have to turn them into advantages. A lot of the smaller town teams, and you name, and when I say smaller town, I mean outside of St. Louis and Kansas City, a lot of, like, Willard and Jackson. Those come to mind immediate with their feeder programs that they're running, and they have their middle school team, taking the same IO that their varsity team's going to take, and they're coaching their youth coaches on how to coach their players. And you get your hands on a kid when he's in second, third grade, and teach him how you want him to play. By the time you get to the varsity team, you're ahead of the game, and that's why you see those teams consistently produce with or without major talent. Now, when they get the major talent, then watch out, because then you got like a top 5 type team in the state. But even when they're not, and when I say talent, I mean the big Division I recruits, the high D2 guys, but when they don't have those guys, they're still going to have a solid season because it's just a good program and the kids know how to play. With the city schools, or suburban schools, I should say, they have access to kind of the training that a lot of the club teams provide, and access to phenomenal facilities. And some of the small towns have their own facilities that are phenomenal. But it's just a give and a take. But it's a little bit harder for the suburban schools to have a thumb, if you will, on all of their guys. It's more of they'll learn about them when they get to high school. So it's a give and a take. There's pros and cons to both. But it is one of my favorite things to see in the state is those teams with feeder programs compete against some of the other programs. It's an interesting dynamic.
Ton of buy-in,
Yeah.
and it's parent buy-in, it's community buy-in, and we've always talked about that on the show as community. I do know that St. Louis is trying to do that a little bit. I know that actually, I think it's Baldwin or somebody is putting little programs together, like feeder stuff.
They do that tournament. They're doing that tournament where it's all, they take all the kids from the different programs and they put them on a team because they're going to that school.
Yeah.
And they run a tournament, which I think is great. St. Peter's Athletic Association is doing it too.
Yeah, I think it's both. Or Baldwin used to do it, and St. Peter's is now doing it. It's kind of taking over.
I think Baldwin's still doing it.
Huh?
I think Baldwin's still doing it.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
I just think that that's a big deal. I wish it was bigger for our programs, because I do think that the coaches, but again, it's got to be buy-in from everybody.
Right. Well, and two here, Grain Valley, they were a Class 5 school a couple of years ago. They are on that border. They're a smaller Class 6, so that's always interesting as well. Want to move on here. Southwest Missouri at 15, at 16. Jim Julian, district champs last year. They lost some guys, but I mean, the big name that sits right at the top there, Sebastian Norman. They got Graham Satterwhite, Dominic Licata coming back. They're still going to be a dangerous team. I don't think they're quite where they were. It'll be interesting. They're going to be young. I think that's one of the things that really struck me, and why you see a lot of these teams that have had success a lot at this place, because they're just younger. They still have talent, and they're probably still better than a lot of other teams. It's just how much will that young talent be able to contribute at the varsity level? And that's the question marks. You can, you put a sophomore in that place, even a junior that hadn't played varsity, sometimes the eyes get wide. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you start struggling coming out of the gate, and it's like, oh, you lose confidence, something goes wrong, and boom, all of a sudden, we're sitting in last place. It can happen. Maybe not last place, but you know what I mean. So, Kevin, I know you're, Sebastian Norman. This young man is just a supreme talent, right?
Yes, and for my money, and we'll be coming out with our updated rankings here this week. For me, he's the top positional prospect in the state of Missouri this year. He will be heavily scouted. Kind of absolute freak show from a raw skills standpoint. 6'4" runner. Can throw it mid-90s across the infield, bat speed and strength, et cetera, et cetera. He's different, right? He stands out. A young guy to keep an eye on that is going to be a major factor coming up is Brady Yates, sophomore infielder. It'll be interesting to see where he plays. His natural position is third base, but also pitches as an upper 80s arm on the mound. But he's got some juice as well, and will be one of the young power bats in the state. So I would expect him to be right in the middle of the lineup, and that might be a good kid to either bat right behind or right in front of Sebastian Norman for Glendale.
There you go. Anything on Glendale up there, Brennan? You seeing anything in the Southwest?
I totally agree with Kevin's sentiment about how good the middle of that order could be, with Yates and Sebastian Norman, also with just the immense talent that Norman possesses. They were a team last year that I thought, if the playoff system was slightly different and they didn't draw Blue Springs on the day that they drew Blue Springs, they could have won the title last year. They just ran into Cole Gibbler, and it was just an unfortunate day for them on that end. We talk about Milbrandt. I think Gibbler kind of went on a run in the postseason, called McGuire-esque on the Kansas City end as well. But I do agree that they're a team that does have a little bit to prove, and it's hard to prove yourself after a season where you have single-digit losses, and probably the best conference down in that general area. So I think that they'll be a team that may have a little bit of figuring themselves out to do at the beginning of the year. But if they can put it all the way together, they're definitely a team that can live in the teens and in the rankings for the whole year.
Guys?
I don't even know where Glendale's at, so I apologize to all those young men down there that are working hard. I mean, I know that you said that in the Southwest. Like I do drive a lot, so I do know where
actually
the vicinity is.
Right.
I have a nephew that played
Glendale's
at
one of the
Glendale.
best facilities in the state. Natural surface, got a press box, big-time outfield wall. It is one of the better high school facilities in the state, natural surface.
There you go, guys.
Well, the one thing about this and being a part of this show, I do start to look up things that I'm not familiar with, right? So I do want to have a conversation, but again, I think a Nixa and all the other schools that are down there just because they're a little bit bigger, you know what I mean, name-wise.
Here is at 15. We're moving on up, Drew. Let's roll that up there. At 15, I've got the Seckman Jaguars. This team for me, I know I got them at 15 here, but I want to see a little bit more. But this is a team I think that they won districts last year when, everybody thought, it was going to be Jackson coming out of that and bing, bang. And here's Seckman. I think Seckman's right there again. I think that I want to see a little bit more pitching wise. I think that's going to be the big key, right?
Because they're going to be young on the mound.
Go ahead.
I mean, you're going to look to Max Jones, who's a very high level leverage arm. You've got other guys that can step up. Brody Kuby's another guy that'll probably end up logging innings for them. I think from an offensive standpoint, when you're looking at Vessels, you're looking at Bradford. I think they're going to score runs. For me, the question mark is on the mound. Yeah.
And that's why they're at 15. If they figure that out,
they're talented. They're young,
right?
I think they've got a couple freshmen that might be up. So it's just going to be, can they pitch on a consistent basis? But the talent level's there.
Yeah,
future's bright at Seckman,
and they can always swing the bats, Kevin.
I'll tell you what, Ryan Bradford's district run was one of the craziest things I've seen. I don't know if I've ever seen a high school hitter hotter, or just hitter hotter in general.
Incredible.
What he did in district playoffs was insane. And I'll tell you, the other thing that separates them, some high school, a lot of good high school teams just have a system figured out. And like their offense isn't necessarily scary. They might have a player that can actually hit. And when I say actually hit, Mitch knows what I'm talking about here. A guy that can hit a real double, a home run, like a guy you have to fear. But there are a lot of teams that have a very good system in place. They'll get the bunt game going. They'll get the run game going. Their kids don't strike out easy. They'll put the ball in play and put pressure on. Seckman was arguably the deepest lineup of real hitters that I've seen. That like dudes that could get in there and rake a double, a homer, like drive the ball with real authority. So that can wear you down as a pitcher. So they can shoot through some bullpens. But yeah, Shane's 100% dead on. If this team's going to make the run, because at the end of the day, you have to have the pitching to advance in the postseason. The bats can carry you, especially towards the back end of districts as the pitching gets a little bit thinner. And I wouldn't want to try to beat them in a football score game when we're playing 14-10 or whatever, because they're going to line up and do that as well as anybody just about. But it's going to Max Jones, Kubi. They're going to need a young guy or an unknown senior or junior to step up and kind of fortify things. But I will say this: Max Jones is, one of the frontline sophomores in the state. Big physical right-hander. Mid to upper 80s currently. He's going to have a chance to be a Division I arm. So a lot of this, quite honestly, is going to fall on him.
He talked a little bit about some juniors stepping up, and I got two kids that play with us that are in Colton Fowler and Cam Benson that are juniors that haven't had a lot of opportunity for them to showcase themselves. Those might be the kids that are on the back end of that roster to help them in the outfield, and they've kind of been unhealthy. Both of them play multiple sports, basketball, wrestling, things like that, so they've been a little beat up at tryout season, but I tell you for me, playing at Seckman a few times, I don't know if they've changed their infield or not, but there's a lot of baseballs that get scorched off their turf because it's not.
Yeah, well, they've actually they've got new turf going to be installed. It was supposed to be installed in January with all the weather problems, so they're going to wait till the fall and rip it out and replace it. But yes, balls get hit really fast through the middle of the infield there. My son played in the program there, and I was in fearful when he was on the mound. I mean, yes.
I feel like it's Old Bush
guy
Stadium.
in their lineup that is going to be missing for the first part of the season is Connor Day, who just had meniscus surgery, and that's an impact bat. That's a guy that's helped them on the mound. That's a guy that helps them behind the plate to give. They got a nice little catching duo between him and Vessels, so it's going to give an opportunity for a young guy to come up and make an impact and see if he can stick, because that's a big part of the offense that he competes. Connor will grind out at bats. He hits the ball extremely hard. He's just a gritty player.
Yeah. When I looked up Bradford's numbers from last year overall, because we have that ability with St. Louis, it was the video game numbers that I saw from McCutcheon and Norfleet in McCutcheon's senior year. Those two guys put up video game numbers. I think it was his slugging. Bradford's slugging percentage last year through the season was .940, folks.
And what most people don't know is he can do
Slugging.
the same exact thing from the left side as he can from the right side. It's impressive.
He had
He doesn't even really switch hit.
He was at
He's just that
500
talented.
on his on base. You got a 1,400 OPS. I mean, that's unconscious stuff right there. I don't care.
He's on the barrel all the time. Competes with two strikes. Just and a great kid to boot.
It'll be interesting to see. Next up, Lee Summit. Now, this is the one that kind of surprised everybody last year, Brennan. Especially on this side, all of a sudden they're winning a lot of games. They jumped right up there. 20-win season, 12 losses. Excuse me, I got to get my glasses on. 24 wins, 16. Jim Melody. They got Rain Williams, Addison Miller coming back. Colby, is that Box or Bocus? Box.
Is I believe how it was pronounced last year.
Very good. Talk to us a little bit about Lee Summit.
Yeah, they're a group that I think could still be in that competitor's realm last year. What they kind of became known for was winning games that not a lot of people expected them to win, and hanging on in a lot of those games too. The Lee Summit series that they have down there with West and North, those are always going to be close games just by nature. But they showed last year that they had guys that could compete both offensively and defensively. This year, I think they're a little thinner towards the top of the line than they have been previously. They did kind of get the worse off end of the suburban realignment, so they're going to have a tough regular season. I don't think that they're going to be a 25 plus win team, but I do think that they do with Rain Williams and Addison Miller have an opportunity to be one of those teams that finish towards the middle of the conference, which for what it's worth usually means you're going to win one or two playoff games.
Yeah. Kevin, anybody we missing in that lineup there?
No, I do love both the players you mentioned. Rain Williams is kind of an electric offensive player. A.D. Miller, one of my favorites too, kind of an undersized middle infielder that can really go and has a good throwing arm. And yeah, they were one of the pleasant surprises of last year. Oftentimes we talk about kind of the reverse. It's nice to talk about someone that kind of overachieved or exceeded expectations, if you will.
Very good. Next on the list, right over here in the middle of
Chesterfield?
right, West
Is
County.
it Creve Coeur or Chesterfield?
Not sure.
It's one of those two.
Christian Brothers.
It's all 40. CBC, Coach Mason Horn. We got that conversation coming up with Coach Horn. They graduated a ton of seniors over the last 2 years and a serious amount of dudes from those two classes. This one here, they've got Michael Sievers. You've got Anthony Toko, Reed Hunter coming back. The junior GT Taylor's right in that mix. This is a young team. Again, this is where pitching, I think, is going to be something that is, where does that come from, right? And where are they going to get those opportunities? That's kind of even what Coach Warren alluded to. There's talent there. It's youthful. I got him at 13 just because I think that's, again, one of these programs that we talk about. Coach Horn just gets his kids ready to play. They win games. They're going to be in the mix. I think they're maybe a year away from competing for a district title, but I think they're right there. They're always a tough out. And they won the district last year.
Right.
So, thoughts, guys?
I work with GT Taylor and Anthony Toko on a regular basis on their two high-impact bats. GT ceiling keeps climbing.
Yeah.
Very talented young man, very grounded. Anthony Toko is a great guy in the middle of the order, runs extremely well, a lot of pop in the bat. What are they going to do on the mound? Mason's son is going to be a big contributor up the middle with the bat. He's shown a lot of progress, gotten his body stronger. He's putting up good numbers. So it's a pitching game, and in that conference too, that they play in, you better be ready. But if anybody can prepare them or set a culture, it's Mason Horn. If he's got to play small ball, he plays small ball. If he's got bangers that year, he's got bangers. But he will adjust the way he runs his program based on the talent level he has, and that's what makes him so good.
Yeah.
There's no question they will compete. I get a chance to see GT every day because he trains out of the facility. He lives right down the street. He's a Timberland guy, which, naturally, as a Timberland guy myself, I would like him to have gone to public school, but he's down at CBC doing his thing. And so I get to see a lot of those guys that he's teammates with come in. And I think when you graduated, Jake McGee, Nas, those kinds of guys, they had a chance to learn from them because they had to sit.
Absolutely.
Or, they played JV. So this is a kid that's going to Kansas in GT that had to sit as a freshman, didn't get, or play JV, I should say, not sit, but as a sophomore, he competed a little bit. We saw him down in Jackson play in the outfield. He played a little second base. So he's a universal kid plus his size, and he's growing. I'm excited to watch GT because I think he's also a humble kid.
Very good kid.
Love what he represents. But his teammates are there too. Like he's got great teammates. I've never met Anthony, but I've seen some of the other boys that are juniors.
Kevin, and one of the things that I think is a big loss for them, and it'll be interesting to see who steps into that role, but Logan Winkleman last year behind the plate was big for them. Having to replace that guy, that's always tough. Not to mention you got, the pitching. So your whole battery you have to replace, Kevin.
Maybe for CBC standards, there's been years recently where I thought they were the most talented team in the state. Not necessarily the best team in the state, though, if that makes any sense. But they have some serious talent. Grant Norhoff is a left-handed pitcher, committed to Louisville, who can, hit 90-mile-per-hour left-hander. So he's had some trouble with the strike zone. If he's throwing strikes and in the zone, he's can be as good as anyone in the state, though. Cam Fuqua is a right-hander that can be upper 80s. Those two guys are going to kind of tell the story there. Ryan Horn has definitely taken a huge jump physically. He looks really good right now. And then a freshman I'm going to give you to remember, Brady Rollo. It will be intriguing to see where he ends up if he can make an impact on the varsity roster. But left-handed hitter, he will be a name that is well known here before long. Whether it's this year or not, to be determined. But there is definitely some talent in the program. And in GT, that's probably the best returning power bat in the state. Hit 7 home runs as a sophomore. So there's some stuff there. But the MCC is unforgiving. And if you can't pitch in that conference, you can forget about it.
Yeah, Rollo was a
Absolutely.
kid that I get a chance to see because, again, they're out there by my neck of the woods. And I wasn't sure what he was going to do as far as getting a chance to play as a freshman or not. I'm excited for Mason. I played against Mason in the Montclair League. I know that Kevin knows what that's about, but I love playing in that league. And so I got a chance to play against Mason. And the way that he competed is the same way he coaches. So I
Absolutely.
expect CBC to be right there again, or at least create some problems for everybody else they play.
Yeah. And one of the cool things with Youth Baseball Midwest this year, we have 3 reporters coming on. We've got a young man from St. John Vianney who is going to be covering the MCC for us. His name is Joe Hartke. He's going to be our correspondent. I love that, right? We're getting all
Branching out.
Yeah. Coming on as an intern for us, covering the MCC. So welcome, Joe. We're looking forward to that and getting a little more in depth on a weekly basis with the MCC because it's going to be a tough conference. And don't forget, Chaminade has got some nice young pieces. I think that has always been kind of that last one. You talk about SLU, Vianney, Desmet, and CBC. Chaminade's got some young. So there's going to be no cakewalks at all in that conference. Next up at number 12, Ben Bear's Blue Springs South Jaguars. We've watched Blue Springs. They've always come to this side. One of my best memories of ever of watching a baseball game was Tommy Lepore on the mound at Zumwalt West in the Midwest Classic. He's up there just warming up between innings. They got the music booming, and he's up there, and he's singing along, throwing a pitch, catching, singing along. I'm like, what is this kid doing, man?
That was a game, by the way. I did that game with you.
It was hilarious, man. I love watching Tommy Lepore pitch. Blue Springs South has been pretty successful. This is a team that, as you start looking at it, maybe I have them a little low. They've got a lot of talent in Ashton Nance, Mason Stover, Spencer. Got to put my glasses back on. Studerman, Garrett Roper, Wyatt Palmer, all seniors. Brennan, what do you think about where I got these guys?
They were a junior heavy team last year. I think you got that right. And it was one of their, in some terms, down years under Ben Bear. Mm-hmm. They're a team that's going to win some games. They're going to be a 20-plus game winner. They obviously have a pretty tough schedule. They're going to play 3 against Liberty North. They're going to play 3 against Leaf Summit West. But I think with Ashton Nance at the top of that lineup, he was a guy who I don't think got enough credit last year because there were times where they would lose a couple games in a row, which wasn't characteristic for them. But I think with the program that they have and the amount of seniors they have, you could pretty easily deduce that they're going to be a well-led team, and they're not going to be a team you want to play in a close game. You're going to have to try to boat race these guys if you want to have a shot. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe that Nance could be a guy who kind of is in one of those the offensive player of the year categories based off of his numbers last year. He's going to be a good offensive talent for them. I'm not sure. Kevin probably has a little bit more on what he's looking like on terms of the recruiting end, but a really good player last year and a guy who I think will be an excellent leader for that group this year.
Kevin.
Yeah, honestly, he's one of the top uncommitted guys out there in his class. Two-way talent, generally viewed more as a pitcher for the collegiate level than a hitter, but he's going to be more than fine at the high school level. Recently decommitted from Kansas. But yeah, these guys were a major player over the last couple of years, and we'll expect them to be right there. Young guy to keep an eye on, Mylan Bristol, sophomore plus runner, is an interesting one to keep an eye on. Some young talent in the program as well.
There you go. Love that. Thoughts, guys? Nope. All right.
Plus runner is always an interesting thing to me because I was not.
No.
So I love it when they talk about these 6'4" speeds, and I'm like, I'm trying to get 7'4s.
I want to go back to that real quick. Here's the other thing about Sebastian Norman. 6'4", right? 6'4", 60. The kid weighs 230. Am I wrong,
That's
Kevin?
moving. Good grief.
No, that's what's different about him. We'll talk about some plus runners, but generally they're 170 pounds. That Sebastian Norman is built like a Division I SEC running back, and that's what's different about him. And that's what has the pro scouts highly intrigued, because his skill set is just something you do not see.
There you go. That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see 230 at 6'4" coming at me.
Choo-choo.
I'm glad at baseball.
Oh,
we have less collisions in baseball.
Right.
Here's always one that's kind of an enigma to me is Lindbergh. I got him right in the middle at 11. Coach Darren Scott, 18 and 15 last year. I know I'm going to mess up Ethan's last name. Is it Cantarera? Canatera.
It's one
Well,
by
there
hitting
you go.
guys.
I figured.
Yep.
Luke
the
Steiner,
show.
Lane Elder, Adler Frask, Joey Kelly. They got some seniors. They lost to Fox in round 1 last year, 2-0 in that District 1, that tough District 1. There's another team in District 1, Lindbergh. I mean, District 1 is just brutal. Talk to us a little bit about Lindbergh.
There's a lot of question marks. I think they're pretty young. I mean, they're going to have some kids step up on the offensive side and the pitching side. I think more pitching than anything. I think they still return some good position players that can score some runs. But at the end of the day, it's all about pitching.
All about pitching. Sorry, Mitch. It's all about pitching.
That's all right. I could pitch. I diced up some 14-year-olds the other day, pitching at about 55 feet, all heaters at about 63 miles an hour.
I know they do have some young arms that are talented. It's
Yeah.
just, they're going to have to come in and they're going to have to get battle tested. And
That's it. And they got some leadership there at the senior level last year. 18 wins, right in there in the mix. Kevin, your thoughts on Lindbergh?
Yeah, Caltatera's kind of the name guy there at the top. But to me, if they're going to make a push, they're going to have to do it with the young guys. Obviously, Caltatera kind of leading the charge, but if he needs a supporting cast, Jack Polite is going to be an infielder to keep an eye on, third baseman. That's former Cardinal Cliff Polite's son there. Jack has a chance to be a very, very good baseball player. Austin Jones, AJ, has been starting since his freshman year. Left-handed bat. Also might need to contribute this year on the mound. Had him up to 84 this winter. He's kind of a key guy for him because I think they're going to need his help on the mound. And then a freshman to keep an eye on. This is going to be one of our top freshmen in the state, John Caltatera, who I understand made the varsity team as a freshman. This is a big boy. He's 6'4", 6'5", up to 86 on the mound, and Mitch, you're going to like him offensively. He's got some juice in there. Plays third base normally, but with Polite and Jones, both of those guys pitch a little bit. I could see him being the backup at both of those positions and maybe being a starting DH. It'll be interesting to see what goes on with him there, his usage, but that is going to be a major guy to know in the years to come.
Size, man. As a big guy, because I was at like a 240 guy when I played high school baseball, which is obviously heavy at 6 foot tall, but I could hit, right? Because I had the size, I had the power. So when you see these guys that are 6'4" and are 220, 240, whatever they are, I'm like, man, that baseball is going to go a long ways. That BB core ain't going to hold them in the park.
No.
I walked up to that young man at the event there at the sports barn because Kevin said, you got to watch these two kids. And I walked up and I'm looking up at this kid, 15 years, 14 years old. And you're like, man, I was never that big.
I just want to know what they're eating.
Right.
That's what I ask them. I do. I ask those, what are you guys eating?
Corn.
Protein. Lots of protein drinks. Exactly. Lots of, so Lindbergh right there will be interesting to see. So let's get into our top 10, starting with the Liberty Blue Jays, KC, Kirk Bragg's squad, 28 wins last year, 10 losses. They lost to Liberty North in the District 8 finals. This is a team that I think is very interesting. Really enjoy. We're gonna get a chance to have Kirk Bragg on a podcast during the season. We're gonna be over in Kansas City with Blue Springs, Lee Summit West. We're gonna be live streaming that game there at Blue Springs. Hope to get Jay Meyer on there too from Lee Summit West as well. But really, Kirk Bragg is fun to talk to, man. I really enjoyed meeting him. Brennan, that's another program that just kind of keeps moving on, correct?
Yeah, both of the Liberty programs. I mean, Liberty is kind of I couldn't tell you off the top of my head exactly what year Liberty started being a powerhouse, but Liberty North has only been a school since 2010. So a lot of that foundation that's in place that you see at Liberty North kind of started at Liberty. Last year they were obviously, as their record shows, a very good team. They lose Tim Teixeira though. And he was the star of the show for them last year. There were some games where it felt like he single-handedly maybe pulled them across the finish line. But as our friend Brad Pitt says, you can't replace him, but you can in the aggregate. And they've got a group of guys who I think will do quite a good job at that. Jack Ketzenbach, Mason Jefferson, Jackson Tankersley are going to be the top end for those guys. I think that they might have a little bit of work to do on the mound. I'm not sure if 28 wins is where I would have them at, but they're going to be a team that competes. Unlike some of the other suburban schools, they are definitely winners when it comes to how the conferences shook out. They're going to have a little bit of an easier schedule in conference play than they've had in previous years. So I think that they're going to be a team that kind of stays right around where you've got them for the majority of the year.
Very good. Very good. Kevin, any thoughts on these, on some of these players you see?
No, I feel like it's kind of been Liberty North or Liberty coming out. They've been such a powerful run, and it's scary to think about before they split how unfair that would have been. But yeah, Coach Bragg, one of the top coaches in the state. Questionbach, one of the top left-handed bats in the state. Hank Blackburn, junior shortstop, is going to be one to watch. But they're always just right. They're always right there. They're battle-tested. Obviously won state with Milbrandt a couple years back, and then kind of lost out to Liberty North for a couple years, and now it sounds like their paths are splitting up a little bit. So we'll see if they can take advantage of that.
At number 9, here's a team that I think could be a lot better. There's a couple of questions, but I think this could be a Final Four team if everything goes right. Mm-hmm. That is the Eureka Wildcats coming off a 24-12 season. Ken Draghi They got some solid seniors in Kyle Regg, of course, Michael. I believe it's Siebels, Ralph Giannino, Will Pfizer. And these are some guys here. This team, Carson Luthauser, the sophomore, the catcher, I think is going to be pivotal for that team. Saw him at the prep baseball event. Any thoughts on Eureka here,
I
guys?
think it's going to boil down to what they do on the mound again.
Yeah.
So it's good. Coach Draghi will have them prepared. Coach Hunt, I mean, they've got a great staff there. They execute little things well. You want out hustle them. You want out, they're very, very aggressive on the base paths. They're going to push the issue offensively. And if they got to play small ball, they play small ball. If they're going to bang it, they bang it. So I think they're going to score runs, which they've proven they can either way, hitting it out of the park in the gaps or playing small ball.
Yeah.
So, for them, I think they're going to, fail or succeed on the mound.
Yes.
They have a history of winning.
Yes.
I mean, I go back to when I graduated high school in 1998. I actually played against Ralph's family at Eureka, so this is always fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
When we played Eureka Legion, they were always one of the top teams in the area. For Thurman Booth, we had to play. It was always fun. The Giannino family I know very well, so it's I stay connected to Eureka because of that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But again, how do you pitch in that conference? How are you going to, in the big games, those emotions, those kids that are now seniors, what experiences did they have as underclassmen? So I'm excited to see what they do. I love to eat at their restaurants. They're an Italian family. So they are Italian. I mean, the fat gold chains, big hairy chest kind of sticking out in your three-piece. But I love well, it's just something that
it's real, right?
Family is Eureka, in my opinion. I don't know how long you've been around that, but I think Kevin probably knows. He's been a St. Louis baseball guy for a long time, and
I remember Brad and Bart Ludhauser from the Eureka Legion days, and I played against them at Rock Memorial, and just
there you go. A lot of history there, right?
Yes,
just the families tend to stay there. Right. Yeah. And again, it's community.
They do.
Culture.
I mean, Ringy, I mean, Ludhausers, Hunt. Yep. I mean, it's, they've been able to stay in that community and make a big impact.
Yeah. Kyle Regg at the top of that, Kevin. That kid's really good, isn't he?
I love Kyle Regg heading to Central Missouri. Most likely would be their shortstop this season. I think they're in good shape on the mound, honestly. I think that's going to be their strength of their team.
Okay.
Quite honestly, for my money, Carson Luthauser, regardless of class, is the best catcher in the state of Missouri. Now, and that's strong words for a sophomore, but he can catch and throw, and he's also going to be able to bang it one day. On the mound, I think they view Ralph Giannino as their ace, and he is kind of, and I do not take this the wrong way, he's kind of at the lower end of the talent standpoint, but the higher end of the pitchability standpoint. Mm-hmm. They have Jackson Joggers, who's the junior 6'6" right-hander committed to Indiana already. They have John Halbercorn, who is an absolute tank, who's already 90 on the mound. Ben Lackey on the mound, who's up to 93. And they also have one of the top freshmen in the state in Jackson Leonard, who is every bit of 6'4". His dad's a 7-footer. So he's still growing, but he was 86-90 and has a 80-mile-per-hour slider. And Mitch, you'll like this, also an outfielder and 103-mile-per-hour exit velo. So I don't know if he'll be a part of the varsity team. But we'll see. And then they got Craig Ringy returns. Junior. Third base or shortstop there. So there's a lot to like, and I like where you have them. I think this, it depends on how things break and whatnot, but definitely a threat for Ozark and making a run at state this year, I would say.
That's why I said what I said about this team. I had him at 9. I kept him there. Then I talked with Coach Draghi. If you want to catch the coach's preview, he talks about his team. I love the coach's previews because Kevin hit right there walking down those guys on the mound. I think their biggest question mark, and if Kevin's right, then they don't have a problem at catcher, right?
Well, We'll see. I mean, he's a sophomore, but I'm telling you that is the most talented catcher in the state, for my money, in terms of the whole package: receiving, throwing, blocking, and it's not a light bat either. Now,
Well,
we'll see what happens as a sophomore playing varsity. I'm not saying he's going to hit 8 home runs as a sophomore, Mitch, but he should, in time, become a major contributor offensively.
and they got a couple of the guys. The biggest thing is when you've got a pitching staff like that at that level, you've got to have a guy behind the plate that can handle those kind of arms and handle them in a very good way, because that can lose you ball games if a catcher doesn't know how to handle those types of arms. And that's just the way it is. It's not easy catching those guys, especially if you start getting movement, sliders, you mix in pitches. You might lose a strike here and there in an at bat that costs you a walk. It's one of those tough things. Catchers, man, make or break teams, because no matter how good your pitching staff is, if you don't have that guy that is equal to the task behind the plate, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, you know how I feel about catchers.
Yes, I do.
As we talk about games when we broadcast them in high school, that's what I played. That's what I'm good at. That's why I work with pitchers now, because I feel like I have a good idea of catching mini bullpens, and watching different things. But the catcher side of me, we talk about this every year. Like, who's your guy that you love to watch? And I miss some of those guys. The guys that that we saw. He graduated a couple years ago, went to Missouri State. We did the game at Baldwin.
William Zara.
Oh, yeah, Williams there.
Yeah, one of the dudes.
Webster
he threw
Groves.
the guy out. There was a pass ball. He threw the guy out trying to advance the next bag from Baldwin's backstop, which, if you've never been there, it's one of the biggest backstops. And he just hosed them. And I'm like, holy smokes, like this is special. And as a sophomore, I got to catch as a sophomore in varsity. I think you get to the point you have nothing to lose. Like, you're playing with house money, right? So I feel like it's the Cubs of 2016. Like, they don't know anything about the curse. And this kid's going to go out and just play ball. And, it changes as you get older, because now you become the guy, but there's guys in front of him. So he can just play baseball.
Absolutely. Next on the list at 8, I got Lafayette. Coach Cole DuPont, 25-13. Runner-up, second place in state. One of the best pitching performances I saw at the highest level from Oswald last year. Kevin and I were sitting behind the home plate there at the state championships watching this game. And, high school umpires can be, generous at times, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with those things. But when Kevin and I were watching this, I finally looked over at Kevin and I said, man, this is legit. This guy had a really good he understood the strike zone. This umpire, he's umpiring college baseball. He is, because it was real. And I'm like, I was shocked. I was waiting for the wheels to fall off, at some point, because you're facing Liberty North with these kind of bats, and Oswald just kept dealing. One of the best pitching performances I've seen at the highest level in high school baseball. It was a lot of fun. So here you have that's the only pitcher they lost. They got all those guys coming back. Pitching is going to be their strength. They lost offense. Michael Callahan's back in the outfield. But this team with Cole DuPont, I think one of the things they like to do is they put so much pressure on you offensively. They will small ball you to death. And they will put so much pressure on you. They make mistakes. They score runs. Their pitching's going to be the catalyst. You lost Xander Schmidt, so they trying to replace him is going to be tough. But I really like Lafayette here, guys.
I think they're deep. They're very, very deep. I think they can still, put together a good run, and it's just all about who gets out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin?
Last year they made their Final Four run. You want to be good up the middle, right? And they were, I would say, elite for high school up the middle. They had Xander Schmidt, senior, Paul Pratt, senior at short, and Michael Callahan, junior center fielder, probably the best defensive center fielder in the state last year, probably. They lost 2 of the 3. So that's an issue. You have I do, obviously love Callahan. Landon Matthews, junior right-handed pitcher, can just flat pitch. It's not necessarily the best wow stuff in the state, but if we're trying to win a baseball game, Landon Matthews would be towards the top of my list. Can just flat pitch, 84, 87, change up and breaking ball anytime you want it in any count. Strikes all day, breaking balls for strikes or not for strikes when he wants. He is an ace. They got a couple young guys, left-handers, Drew Pickering and Michael Sen are probably going to be a big part of the equation. And they have a sophomore named Payne Kent that's pretty physical. So it will be interesting. I just see it as, man, you lose your senior shortstop, you lose your senior catcher, and both of them were plus defenders. That's going to be a challenge to replace.
Mm-hmm.
So
they
he
have one of
thinks
the
I
best
have
young
him too high.
coaches in the state, though.
Yeah, I agree. Brennan, I saw your eyes get big and you were shaking your head there. Were you at the state championships there last year? Did you see that game?
I was. I was fortunate to be there. It's tough. I would have to agree with Kevin that I think they might have some growing pains trying to figure it out defensively. But you've seen them kind of have the magic when it comes to the postseason. They went on an incredible run last year that I did not expect. I thought that they were maybe. I don't want to say they were. I thought they were an easy out at state because I didn't think they were an easy out, but they weren't in my top two teams that I thought were going to play for the title. But I think that, I mean, I still get hung up on Oswald's performance. I mean, to pitch that well with that strike zone against that team is just something that you're not really going to see, but for probably once a decade at that stage. So it's an incredible game.
It was something else. And, it was just fun. It was a lot of fun to watch. Up next, the Enigma, Fort Zumwalt West.
It's not an enigma. It's not. I learned my lesson the first year. No matter who they lose, they're still going to be good next year. Credit to Coach Golf. I tried to do that one year, the year they lost Whistler and Deverman on the mound. I'm like, well, there's no way they're going to be able to replace that. And they were better the next year. So they're going to be really good this year.
That's it. It's over. Done. Well, I'll tell you what. Offensively, Andon Hyde is cleared to play. So I'm going to do this real quick. As far as offensive lineup, with Pile, there it is. I was looking for System at the top. Nolan System at the top. Pile.
Keep going.
You got Andon Hyde. You got Kyle Feisty, Brody Signorelli, Carter Perry. You've got depth all the way down through this roster. Brant Deverman. The one, Kevin, that just said there, he's the one that kind of, I think, just has fallen through the cracks a little bit. But Michael Wolf is just a sophomore, and, because all the big names there are there, people are talking about this stuff and whatnot. I think Michael Wolf could be just like that guy that's like, I'm just going to go out here and play baseball. Nobody's thinking about me, and just terrorize pitchers, because this kid can hit. I went out to the Zumwalt West practice. I'm trying to get out to see some of the practices, watch teams and whatnot. And I got out there and watched that team. They're good.
Very good.
I want to see how their pitching comes around. They've got guys.
Mm-hmm.
They have guys, but I want to see how it comes around. I think that's, they got Feisty behind the plate, which he is good. Feisty is a really good catcher. I think he grew up a lot last year behind the plate, and I think that experience is going to help him this year. I think they're going to need that. They relied on two pitchers last year a lot. So Carter Perry's back. You got Pyle there. but Pyle's been pitching in the Central. I want to see him against some of the Class 6 schools and some of the, South. It's a little different.
Right.
That's just my take on that.
Hyde's going to lug some time
Yep.
on the mound.
Yep.
I mean, so when you can add a couple other arms like that to go with what they have, there's a lot of depth there.
Absolutely.
And you got a lot of good protection in the lineup too. So
yeah, you got to. Yeah, you as a pitcher, you're going to pitch to that lineup. You're gonna have stress 1 through 9.
absolutely.
Period.
Different kinds of stress too, and I think that you'll have leadoff hitters and 2 hitters having 18 to 25 RBIs for that group, which I don't think is normal even at the high school level that you're going to see that much production.
No, they're going to put up a lot of runs.
Yeah, and you know what the bottom half of the lineup's going to do. They're going to bunt. They're going to run because that's kind of how Goff coaches. He utilizes, again, he's one of those coaches that utilized what the talent he has.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in is their pitching side. And I had the opportunity to see Fort Small West because they had to come in late to the hitting zone. And the first up was Nolan Sism pitching live. And I'm like, oh, you're going to have to throw this year. It's been a while since he's had it been relied on. And he goes, well, I hope not. But of course, he said he'll do whatever he does for his team. And these are guys that still can flat throw, but haven't had to. And so I'm interested in seeing how Sism will be used and Brennan Pyle for Zumwalt West.
Brennan, how much, Zumwalt West has been in the state spotlight for quite some time. How much do you know about those guys, and how do you see them in this mix?
Well, I got to watch them quite a bit last year. They were a team that I was pretty high on. I watched them play Howell in the Troy tournament. I think, as you mentioned, they've got a lot of guys who can just straight up play baseball. Wolf at the bottom of that lineup. Sism was a guy, I think, even going into last year that I said, oh, this kid is going to be very, very good. He was great as a sophomore, very good last year. He had a sub 1.5 ERA, and I think 10 1/3 on the mound last year. So able on the mound. I think that they're going to be spread maybe a little bit thinner on the mound than they were last year. But as you mentioned, having them anywhere outside of the top 10 in the preseason feels like it's always going to come back and make you look stupid at the end of the year.
Yeah, it usually does. Kevin, we'll finish. What do you got for Zumwalt West, bud?
Yeah, I'd agree. It's going to come down to the pitching. I think Brennan Pyle's set to be the ace of the staff. Senior heading to Loyola Marymount. He's in upper 80s, can touch a 90. So there's plenty of ability there. Andon Hyde can be an upper 80s arm. But we'll see on the depth there behind. They're in an enviable position because you get a talented freshman last year like Michael Wolf, and they're able to put him down in the lineup a little bit. And he's in a great position with just Pyle and Hyde and Sism. Sism's been a day one starter for him. He batted third or leadoff as a freshman. They swapped him there, starting shortstop, so they're not scared to play a young guy. They're obviously one of the at the top of the class in the state of Missouri, Zumwalt West.
Yeah. Okay, at number 6, this team here. I don't know how much people are talking about him here, but new head coach, Coach Wilson retires. DeAndre Josenberger, met him at the coaches clinic. 27-10 last year. A lot of seniors coming back. Brody Earlbeck, Kyle Piercy, Easton. I believe it's pronounced Felipe, right? Or is it just Philip?
Yes.
Felipe? Yeah. One of those two. Jackson Thomas, Evan Abbott, Jacob Garcia, sorry, Easton, and Grant Madrid. They lost in the semifinal of District 8 to Liberty. I love Brody Earlbeck on the mound. We saw him last year against Liberty North. We live streamed that game. He pitched a 3-hit shutout against Liberty North. He's going to Iowa. They've got some depth here. Staley could be a Final Four team. Brennan?
I think that this is going to come back and look like one of your gym picks in the early season, because I think that there's some question marks based off what they lost last year in last year's senior class. But Brody Earlbeck is going to run the show for them. I mean, he's a guy who sits in the 90s. He's got a changeup that he worked in well last year. The guy just eats and breathes athletics. I think that's what both of his mom and dad do for a living, is related to sports science. He was a guy, I watched him in his very first high school game as a pitcher. It was, I think that it would have been the 21 season. And I knew then that he was going to, I mean, he was special. Just the way that his build projected at the time. And just the skill set that he already had, he was a guy who was going to be pretty impressive. I think that they, just in terms of how much talent in mass that they bring in, is going to make them a 20-plus win team. We're going to have some interesting matchups. I think Staley Liberty is going to be a really, really, really interesting series this year. I could see them being as high as a 27-win team, but I could also see some growing pains under a new head coach and them kind of rounding out in the teens. But I think that they've got a high floor, which for a first-year head coach is a very good thing to have. Also, lastly, unfortunately, I do have to bow out at about noon because I have to draw or get blood today.
Oh,
the unfortunate.
We are going. I know these get. That's cool. I understand.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I kind of tried to carve out as much time as I could, but this is the third time I've drew blood since I've come back to college this semester. Big thing at Mizzou for some reason.
Well, we understand.
Before he goes, I'm envisioning MLB Network for this man.
Oh, yes.
Or an SID at some major university, because Brennan, you have what it takes with how you speak and then just the knowledge of how you can put something together. So I don't know what direction you're going in your journalism career, but I feel like he could be on the MLB Network or SEC Network or an SID somewhere, which could be fun.
Well, I appreciate it, guys.
Well, we hope
Let's
to have you
MLB
come.
Network, not waste your talent as an SID.
Well, there's some good SIDs, man. I would love to be an SID for Mizzou. I think that would be fantastic. I know SIDs don't make the same money MLB does.
SID. You don't get to hear them on a nightly basis.
Listen, I don't know if I want to work that hard, guys.
Well, that is an SID. The SIDs work their tails off.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Well,
I appreciate it.
Brennan,
Thanks
we'll
for letting
definitely
me-
have. Yeah, we're going to have him back next week for the Class 4 rankings. Hopefully,
sir.
we'll maybe work to try and we're just talking. But thank you. We're going to have him back on. We're going to talk to him throughout the season. We appreciate you taking the time, buddy.
Perfect, and I will give you some cliff notes on Lee Summit West next week as well, just because I'm missing out on my guys from KC. So
We'll do
I
that.
appreciate it.
Thanks,
Perfect.
buddy.
And I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.
Take care. All right, moving on. Let's get up to Kevin. I want you to talk about Staley.
I want to pick up on Staley real quick because for me, they're a top 5 team in the state. There's some stuff I mentioned. Luthauser being my favorite catcher in the state, regardless of class. If I had to pick what team has the best catching position or depth, it's without question Staley. They got Easton Felipe heading to Wichita State, and they have a sophomore catcher named Andrew Maltzby that is just a shade. He's right there with Luthauser. So they got 2, in my opinion, Division I catchers, which is an enviable position to be in because most teams don't have one, college level type catcher. So they're in great shape, and they have a pitcher that not many people know about. Kyle Piercy missed last season with injury, but is a physical right-hander up to 94. And they also have one of the better freshmen, Crew Patrick, which we'll see if he can make the varsity team at a school like Staley. But there's a ton of talent there. Coach Johannesburg, it knows what he's doing. That's not a typical first-year head coach. His son plays at KU. He's done a lot of coaching in his day, so I have zero worries about that aspect of it.
Yeah, well, I missed. He said it's a top 5. But I do think this could be a Final Four team, Kevin. I really do.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at the district path, so obviously we've had that before where we thought Liberty and Liberty North were like our number 1 and 2 or 3, 4 teams in the country or in the state, and they play each other. So one of them doesn't get out of district. So, that could certainly be a scenario again.
I agree. And that's the tough thing about District 8. It's just that brutal. It's tough. So there you go. Let's get into our top 5. It starts with local MCC, Desmet, Coach Tim Canavan, who I think is one of the best coaches in the state. They were 21-12 last year. They're bringing back some dudes. Leading that charge is Charlie Wortham. Thunderous bat. This kid can really hit.
Yeah, he rakes. I mean, it stays in the middle of the field. I mean, he's he's a dual threat guy. He can hit for average. He can hit for power, and just very formidable.
Very, very much so. They got a lot of seniors coming back in Kanan Patterson, Landon Edmonds, Sylvester, I believe it's Tournier, Braden Wakula, Noah Cunningham. Desmet, I think, is the team. And this is going to be tough, and I probably should have flipped this, but I didn't. Just because, I think the talent level up here, if it comes together for Vianney, right there at 4, is what they are.
Right.
But I see Desmet, they just being the MCC, and CBC beat them last year in the district championship, and I could see that reversing this year. But Vianney is that sleeper right there, but we'll come back to that. Kevin, what do you think of Desmet here, buddy?
Yeah, you just hit on all the big seniors, and they got a ton of them. I do think Desmet they're loaded the bear this year for sure. Sophomore that's going to be a big piece of this is Brandon Ott. He threw significant innings as a freshman. If you're looking at it like, hey, what do you need to make a Final Four run? Well, you need an ace, right? They got some bats. They got some big-time bats. I like their depth positionally. They're probably going to need Brandon to be that guy on the mound. And he's more than capable. He's 6'3" right-hander. They can run it in the upper 80s, 90. So that's going to be a big piece of it. Luke McAtee's a sophomore catcher now. Obviously, they have Wortham there, but Luke's going to be a young guy that I would imagine will push for some sort of playing time as a backup or DH even. But I do like this Desmet outfit a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be – they're right there. Next, and then their MCC, one of the MCC rivals, Vianney. Oh, and here you go on May 8th. Don't miss it. We're going to be at CBC. Desmet's coming to town. So we'll have that CBC Desmet matchup live streaming May 8th from CBC. So if you can't make it out at the ballpark, make sure you watch.
That should be a spirited one too. They are right down the street from each other, or highway, I should say. So I'm fully expecting to have some.
I can't wait to see that game.
Spirited fun, if you will. I just want to add to the Desmet side because I know Tim Canavan really well. I know his coaching staff, the guys that he brings in, and the one thing that I always think about Desmet is how are the guys going to play together. How are those personalities coming together? Because they do have a lot of talent, but, are they the kind of kids that might take a day off, and you have to be concerned about that. That's kind of some of the conversations that I had is like, one day they'll have a interesting practice and the next day it'll be great. And so consistency, I think, is going to help Desmet out this year.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And focused on staying there, which I'm sure Coach Canavan will make sure that happens.
Right.
Vianney. We've talked about this team a lot. I think everybody understands that 18, 17-1. They dealt with injuries early in the season last year, but they never recovered from that. Mm-hmm. They got some guys back. They just didn't seem to recover from those injuries early on and just never got back in the groove. They lost a lot of close games. It wasn't like teams just run them out of the ballpark or anything like that. But this is probably one of the most, if not the most talented team in the state as far as on paper. What do you guys think?
It's can they play to their potential? I mean, that's kind of been the MO is, can they meld together, because on paper they're phenomenal. I mean, the amount of college commitments they have and signees, and it baffled me that they struggled at times last year. But hopefully they can pull it together and make a run, because they're loaded with talent.
Yeah. Kevin, thoughts?
Yeah, they were one of the preseason darlings last year for sure, and quite honestly, underachieved. There's no reason this team shouldn't be highly competitive and push for a state championship run this year. They have all the pieces. They got the arms now. Last year, there were significant injury issues. They lost their top 2 catchers to injury at points during the year, so they had to bring a young guy up. But you got J.D. Dorman as the ace of the staff there. That is a front line. That is a 101 type guy. Zach Van Hook Jr., left-hander, heading to Mizzou. They got another kid named Ben Thuroff that only threw about 8 innings for them, but took a massive leap forward this offseason. Physical kid, up to 90 on the mound. So there's a lot of pieces there, and then you go through, Nolan Jaworski going to Cincinnati, Trey Jezorowski heading to Central Missouri. You got Riker Benz. There are a lot. Nick Stewart, senior shortstop, going to Truman State. There are so many pieces there, in just depth, that you're just looking for them to put it together this year. So. You can't argue with the talent. I wouldn't say they're the most talented team in the state, but they're in the conversation.
Right.
Okay.
Depth is
Fair
key, and that's who we have some kids at attend Vianney. I think he's got one that hits.
I've got Cole Adair, who's going to Missouri Southern State, who's a very high impact bat. Could be a pretty big piece to the puzzle there too.
Easton Dill hits with you.
Yes.
Who's a big kid, who's a sophomore, who I don't know if he made the varsity roster. Obviously,
JV right now.
He's on JV,
yes.
And then you have Brady Vermilli. As a young kid, I think he is maybe a sophomore junior. Again, another 16-year. He actually impressed us on the mound this year. He was 84, 85 in the offseason. I didn't even know he pitched. I thought he caught and played infield. Mm-hmm. And he's like, nope, let me get on the bump. And he throws it. I'm like, man, Vianney's just got all this talent. And how do you put it all together? Because the young kid that had to catch a little bit last year due to injuries, where do you put him?
You got a healthy Schaefer who's going to play at the college level. Hopefully he can stay healthy. And, he's a very good receiver, a good catch and throw guy. And, he's got some pop with the bat, can come up and get a big knock when you need it too. And he's just a great kid, good team leader.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing how some of these kids act as role players. And I think that depth will help them. How do you shine as a DH, or if you play, multiple positions, mixing at first base, if somebody's got some nagging injuries or something like that.
Yeah.
They're
Absolutely.
deep for sure.
They are deep. So at number 3, though, and we will catch up with Mr. Knabe next week with Lee Summit West. Jay Meyer, the head coach, 28-10, right at the top here. Tyler Wood, Jackson Aiken. These are 2 dudes. We've got coming up. We got an opportunity. We got a player spotlight coming up with Jackson Aiken, so that's coming up soon on the channel. So you don't want to miss that really interesting conversation with that young man going to Oklahoma. Jake Riggins, Aiden Katzberg, Garrett Anderson, Dylan Cassidy. They lost in the district final to Lee Summit last year. So I'm sure they're going to be looking, that was District 7. I'm sure they're going to be looking to take care of some business this year. And again, with the talent level on this team, they got, and one of the things that was, we're talking about the seniors, and I'm sure Kevin will bring this up, but when I looked at their roster and saw they have a lot of dudes. They have like 6 or 7 juniors on this team that are just really high-level baseball players as well. So the depth of this team is something else, and I think Lee Summit West is primed for a Final Four run. I think they're one of the best teams in the state. Kevin?
Yeah, I would agree with you. They have one of the bigger draft prospects in the state, Tyler Wood on the mound, who's up to 98, 6'3", right-hander, legitimate mid-90s arm, very good athlete. Jackson Aiken, heading to OU, senior infielder with some juice. Hayden Sharp, junior left-handed hitting first baseman, committed to Mizzou. So there is plenty of talent here for them to make a good run. Obviously, I think it comes down to what goes on behind Wood, and then also, sometimes you get these high profile guys, and Tyler certainly should. But then agents get involved and whatnot, so you're on pitch counts, and so how do how does the pitching behind him go? Especially as we get into the postseason, that will kind of tell the story for West.
There you go. I think that's a big thing. And then the distraction, can you handle as a team that kind of distraction? Because, we've all seen it. I've seen it. You have that kind of kid. He's going to get MLB guys coming to the games, and you got the guns up and down, up and down, up and down, especially in the first 3 innings, or if he gets past, into the 5th inning, whatever the case may be.
Uh-huh.
And they're standing there watching it, and just the throng, that can be unnerving, can it?
I had a chance. I had luxury, I guess I should say, with Adam Hatchman, and seeing numerous scouts at games and the distraction that it is, because you'll hear it. You'll have an offensive guy who wants to show out, right? So they go out and press a little bit, and it's not the same, and then they're not on that level.
Right.
They're talented kids, but they're not on that level, and it's just like, go play baseball and let the college guys, the college scouts that are there, but when the stands fill up with radar guns, the juices get to flowing. And so sometimes you worry about health issues, like, just trying to overthrow and things like that. And, but again, it's neat. And
Yeah.
if you have the mentality of you got nothing to lose in front of these guys, that can go a long ways to help that team just kind of get a little extra juice that they need to get through a game against a tough opponent, when he's on the bump. But it's sometimes it can be a letdown too, because you have the stands on a Tuesday and the stands are full, and you go on Wednesday and all those guys are gone, in the GACs we saw it, and the next day it's like, man, I'm a good pitcher too, and it's like, it's not the same. So you never know what the personality of a kid is how they're going to take it, but I'm sure that head coach there is going to have them focused on gameplay.
Do you have something you were going to say, Kevin?
No.
Okay.
I hit my piece on them already.
All right. Nixa. Nixa is pretty much ready to go everywhere. They don't have, Jackson Gamble is at the top of that, going to Missouri Southern. I saw Colin Kelly pitch last year against Springfield Catholic. He's gotten better. They have depth behind them. They have seniors. They have juniors. Wyatt Vincent, another player spotlight that's coming up. That was a great conversation. That kid that was a great conversation I had with Wyatt Vincent. He's one of those, I think, that's got it right up here, patrolling center field. You got Caden Cloud at shortstop. They have a sophomore catcher that is really good. Doesn't have the experience because they've graduated a couple guys. He's really good, so that's really maybe the only question mark on that team. Am I missing that, Kevin?
No, they have a really good senior class and a really good sophomore class. Obviously, Caden Cloud's one of the top positional players and will be the other positional player that is heavily scouted this spring out of Missouri. Shortstop heading to Kentucky. The three, and obviously you got Wyatt Vincent, and those guys have both been playing since their freshman year there. They have three sophomores that are kind of in that conversation as like, hey, who's next? And Rowan Johnson was the catcher you mentioned. And then the two kind of guys that are probably even a notch above him in terms of ability and talent would be Cameron Miller, third baseman, right-handed pitcher, and Adam McKnight, outfielder. So they have some big-time talent across the board. And then Jackson Gamble is a true ace, 6'4" right-hander, up to 91, going to Moso. I definitely like where your head's at here with Nixa. They're one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the state, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
Man, I think about these conversations, how some of these athletes are staying in state and playing for some of these top programs. And, when you hear Missouri Southern, it's a D2 school, people think, whatever. Missouri Southern's a top 10 team right now, I think, in D2. Central Missouri is always going to be there. And these are guys that are D1 athletes that may make that choice to go play a little bit sooner than, sitting behind somebody for a few years at a bigger D1 school. And don't sleep on just because he's going to Missouri Southern.
No.
He's not a guy. He is a guy.
Yeah.
And I would challenge you to stand in the box if you want to, go up against a guy going to Missouri Southern. Because, it's been a while since Missouri Southern's been this good. And they are recruiting very well. And I love to see some of these guys staying home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had Coach Tuck on the show way back in the early part of the fall talking about recruiting and whatnot and what they're doing. They are doing a fantastic job through that Southwestern, and the amount of talent that is in the Southwest. Webb City is in their backyard. You got Springfield with all the talent there down into Arkansas and up through that. How can you not produce some quality teams? And they are doing a great job of keeping those kids at home. They are.
I really like what's going on in D2 baseball.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm a
Yep.
D2 guy,
But
coached at the D3
Missouri
level.
Southern's plucking a lot of St. Louis athletes that are good too.
Yeah.
You got Umsel. We talked about Coach Ewell and Umsel.
Yes.
Yeah. Coach Hughes, we got down. Hey, if you get a chance, go check out the winter workout tour. You want to know why Nick's is so good all the time? Go watch. We were there with their youth program, Nixa Baseball Club. That just aired. When you get done here, go watch the winter workout tour at Nixa and watch how that program continues to produce talent. And
I had the pleasure of coaching at University of Missouri St. Louis with I had Logan and Colby Hughes both on the team. Very good, very good leader of young men. Very solid. So
Absolutely.
they've got really good structure there.
Yes, those are programs. So when you have Nixa, so at the top, it's the Vikings. Coach Perkins, Francis Howell, 34-5 last year. Didn't quite finish. To me, and people may disagree, but I think the loss of Humbert and Vaughn in the middle of that lineup cost them in the championship run last year. Leo got a few swings in because I love the way Coach Perkins put that. He says, hey, he might run into one. And if he does, he could hit it out of the park. But, Leo wasn't healthy. Vaughn had messed up his shoulder, and it really changed the dynamics of that lineup. He had Titus still there, but he needed Leo and Vaughn.
You got to have some protection.
And I think that was the difference for this team last year. And you're returning both of those guys. They lost Sissel. They lost Rouser, the pitcher. And everybody else, though, this team is loaded for bear, Kevin.
Yes, and this would be who I would refer to as the most talented team in the state. They are second in the country, not the state, the country, in college commits with 14. And they actually did not lose Rouser. Rouser is a senior this year. So they have 14 collegiate guys going on that are currently committed. They have more than that, actually, when you get into who hasn't committed yet. But, it always starts on the mound, and they never have a shortage of pitching. You got Eli Skidmore, who's heading to St. Louis U, was up to 94 this winter. Probably the ace of the staff, or not probably the ace of the staff, Dylan Curtis, junior, heading to Mizzou. Jake Brett Schneider, also junior right-hander, heading to Mizzou. So it's a ridiculous amount of talent. You already talked about Hubbard and Vaughn. Colin Lovelady heading to Heartland. You brought up Rouser heading to Maryville. They're basically playing a collegiate guy at every single position, more or less. And it doesn't stop there. They have some they get. I love when they play these tournaments, and Coach Perkins always puts together a tremendous schedule, and they'll be playing like their, ninth game of the week, and he'll still be rolling out. And I'm exaggerating slightly, but when they go into the Columbia tournament or the Troy tournament, they'll be on their fifth game of the week. They have sophomores that are super talented. Alex McCarthy, Shake Specker, Drew Dirks are all guys that are going to be known guys that are in that sophomore class that are going to be in a role, they'll be role players on this team and on another team, even teams that we've talked about that are ranked highly, be stars on the team. So there's a tremendous amount of depth on the team, and obviously they have experience. They're well coached. They've been in the postseason. I like your pick here at number 1.
The only question I have, I want to see who's going to catch for that team. I think that if you have one question mark about, just experience, Kevin, it would be at catcher, because they kind of filled it in last year. Who's going to take that role? Who's going to take the horns and handle that staff? That's the only thing I would say about Francis Howell. Other than that, Eli Skidmore, it's Matt Rouser, I know, that's back, but wasn't their number 1 pitcher last year? Did I have
Alex
that
Bryan?
Wrong? Alex Bryan. I'm sorry. My fault. I said the wrong kid. Yes.
Who is also at Maryville now.
And pitching very well.
He's doing well, yes.
So there you go. That's our top 20. I've been doing this now a couple of years. And the first couple of years, Kevin kind of just laughed at me a lot of times. No.
Not so much. You're getting better?
Am I getting better, Kevin?
Yes. Yeah, I would say you're right around it. This is good. It's all subjective, too. It's the beautiful thing. Like, we'll find out how smart we all are here in May.
And then we go, wow, we really screwed the pooch on that one.
Well, I guess we got to do a mid-season then, too.
Quite honestly, sometimes you do have it right, and it just goes awry. Like Vianney last year, I don't think there's a guy out there that wouldn't have had Vianney in any shape or form, not in the top 10, and arguably right around that, that 4 or 5 range in the state. And it, injuries happen, and, that can change a complexion of a season in a hurry. So, talking about it here today, this all looks pretty solid. And, but that doesn't mean that's how it's going to play out. And that's why it's a beautiful thing is, it's all talk, and then the kids get to determine all this throughout the course of the season.
That's what I love about what you just said. The kids get to determine this. And that's the one thing that competing against some of these teams on here, every week that, we had Howell, it was a hashtag beat Howell thing. And I still, even though I'm not coaching in the GACs, and I love Coach Perkins and I love those kids there because I get to work with some of them. I've known Dylan Curtis since he's 11 years old. I played against Joe in high school, his dad. And it's just like, still to this day, I'm like, how do you beat Howell? Because I think it's just magic over there. I don't know what he's doing to, kids, families want to move there to play for that coach. And, real quick shout out to Coach Goff. I know he's retiring this year at Fort Zumwalt West.
Absolutely.
We forgot to mention that earlier, so I wanted to bring that up. But again, it's just as a competitor, every single week that you have Howell on your schedule, like it's circled for everybody, right? Fort Zumwalt West, it's circled for everybody. Nixa, it's circled for everybody. And so that you're going to get everybody's best.
Right.
Even the teams that are in the back end of the conference still want to beat you.
Absolutely.
because you want to beat the best, and it's a statement.
They don't
if
shy
you
away
have
from
to.
playing the best. And
Yeah,
what makes them
that's the
so
thing.
good is they're battle tested come playoff time.
Yeah, it's,
Absolutely.
and you never know. Like we watched the GAC Classics, or we hosted them and broadcasted them, and Fort Zumwalt or Francis Howell North had competed well with Francis Howell for a while, and then Francis Howell realized, well, we better turn it on, because you don't let a team like that hang around,
right?
Because you don't want to lose against somebody like that. So Howell is Howell, and it's crazy. They've cut kids that are committed to college because they have such good sophomores. We got some lower D2s or JUCO guys that are getting cut from this program, and it's insane to think about that.
Right.
Yeah. It is what it is. These are some of the games we have this year that we're going to be, as far as our GAC opener game of the week. Francis Howell will be visiting Fort Zumwalt West. If you can't make it out to the ballpark on April 8th, please tune in. This is going to be a dandy of a game. Love that one. We also have Howell at Francis Howell Central. Central could be, I like Howell Central. That'll be an interesting one. On April 9th, we got Lafayette at Eureka.
Oh,
love that one. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's a rivalry game. So, battle of top tens. Battle of top tens on April 8th. Then April 17th, we're going to see Oakville taking on Parkway Central at Oakville on April 17th. We got Seckman taking on Parkway South. We got Lee Summit West visiting Blue Springs. We're going to be live streaming that. We got Desmet at CBC. Desmet. Sorry, Desmet. Did I say it wrong?
I call him Deschmutz.
The Palace on Dallas.
So that's our lineup. We got some really solid games. We got a lot of top 20 teams here. We're looking forward to the season. So I know we've gone a long time. We flapped our gums pretty good for you, but I hope everybody enjoyed that. Give us your top 20 down there. We'd love to see it. Go ahead and throw it in there. If you think we're crazy, tell us. It's okay. As Kevin said, it's all subjective. We'll know, June 7th, I think it is. Saturday, June 7th.
State tourney.
That's championship Saturday for Class 5 and 6 right there.
I didn't know this. I have to say it again. I didn't realize they were going in the quarterfinal games, they were going the best of 3 series. So we're going to see some of these top 20 teams, how much depth they have. I
took that into consideration when I started looking at some of the top 10 teams. Where's the pitching depth? Because, those are the keys to me in 5 and 6. You got to have the guys that can get you, you split. Who's pitching on Saturday in game 3? You're talking about really good baseball teams, and then you put in, this is game 7 of the World Series, or game 7 of the National League Championship Series to get to the Final Four. Can you unpucker yourself long enough to go out there and throw some strikes and get the job done? You are going to find out who is a dude.
Right.
Because in my opinion, it's not just throwing 95. It's going out there in game 3 of the quarterfinals when your team is going to state to go out there and dominate the team that you're supposed to be that guy.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, as a somebody I can't compete at that level anymore because obviously I graduated, but how are they going to coach it? Do you have a guy that you have that's a good 1A? Do you have him throw the first game, throw your ace the second game in that series? I would be interested in seeing how these guys coach it.
Strategic.
If you have a Thursday, Friday, Saturday matchup.
It's doubleheader Friday, and I believe it's Saturday.
Wow.
So
yeah. And I was always curious on if that was the case, how do
it's
you
something like that.
Staff?
Yeah.
Because do you throw just enough pitches for a 1-day rest so you can bring a guy back?
A lot of strategy in play now.
Yeah, I love the super regional type thing because I think the atmosphere in college baseball during super regionals is amazing.
Absolutely.
Especially game 3s.
Right.
You never know.
No, this has been a great breakdown, and I can't wait for the season to start. A lot of talent. We clearly rolled through plenty of guys, and just thinking about the teams that we left off the list too. So there's a lot to take in throughout the course of spring. It's going to be fun.
Do not sleep on Missouri baseball.
No.
You
It's
cannot
gonna be
sleep on
exciting to
Missouri
watch this
baseball anymore.
unfold. No, you
Not
cannot.
anymore. It's
No.
it's not and I love the 2027 class. I
Oh,
started
boy.
looking
Yes.
it up. You talked about it again here today. All the sophomores. I'm happy for our catchers trying to finally make the TV. Because it's always pitching and hitting. But my guys that are in the 2 position on the field, I love catchers.
I told this to Kevin when we were at the last event. There was a ton of catchers there, Kevin.
There were, and Mitch, if you're excited about the 27 class, which I don't disagree about, I think this freshman class is going to be one of our stronger classes in recent memory as well.
Can I ask? I know we're trying to leave. Can I ask
No,
a
that's fine.
question?
Go ahead.
How do you feel about these schools and these young athletes, freshmen, sophomore specifically, and the ability to play varsity and sit or JV and play? How do you feel that a coach should attack that?
I personally, if you're going to bring a kid on varsity, he better play. Now, you can make an argument like pitching's a little bit different. Like some coaches will bring a kid up to pitch varsity and he'll hit JV. That makes some sense. Like I get that situation, but you can't. I shouldn't say you can't. In my opinion, you probably shouldn't bring a kid up to be your 4th outfielder or to be your pinch runner and give them, 2 pinch hit at bats once, per week. I think you're stunting development if you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was always just curious because I know that some places are big on culture, and maybe the JV level or freshman level play or coaches aren't always the best, if you will, options. I'm not trying to pick on any of the JV freshman coaches or any decisions that are made. Please don't think that at all, because I was once a freshman coach and a JV coach, and so I know that there's good coaches out there. But it's to me, it's like I think about the varsity level and experience. If that freshman kid is going to be a player at the sophomore level, do you want to give them that chance? But that's what late call-ups are for, right? That's what you have district opportunities for. They can practice with them.
In those tournaments, like those early season tournaments when you're rolling 5-6 games in a week, that's a great time to call a kid up and give him a taste and get him a start or some innings on the mound.
Yeah, I was just being nosy there because I
Oh,
just
no, I
always
think it's a
wonder
great
what
question.
what a high school coach goes through in trying to make some of these decisions for these young people. I mean, because some of these kids get their feelings hurt. I didn't make varsity baseball. I'm like, dude, do you understand where you're at?
Right.
I mean, come on, you're lucky that you made the team. So,
Guys, thanks. I appreciate everybody's takes. It was a lot of fun. We appreciate Brennan Knabe for coming on the show from Metro Sports. MOKAN, he'll be back next week for our Class 4. Hope to have you guys back for
Absolutely.
Class 4. We'll see it. We're going to do it. Class 4, we were talking about the small towns. I'm going to tell you something. Class 4 is really good. From Class 6, 5, and 4, across the state, there is some high-level baseball being played. These teams, these Class 4 teams, Blair Oaks, the state champs from last year, they can go and compete at the Class 6 level. They have those kind of teams. You have a lot of this stuff going on here from Boonville, Moberly. We talked about that young kid, Carter Pearson, of 2027. We could see him pitching at Mexico High School. Class 4 squad, they were a player in it, 20-plus win season last year. A lot of good baseball. So make sure you don't miss the Class 4 next week. It'll be really telling. We got some great coaches previews. We got the Boonville coach the Knob Noster coach, Bill Bivens. Also, Class 4. I love it, Knob Noster. How can you not like Knob Noster, Ned?
well, I'm immature, so it's
Coach
very fun
Mike
to me.
Coach Mike D'Amelia from Blair Oaks is on. I know I'm missing guys. We talked to Jerome Simpson from Smith Cotton. We've talked to a lot of coaches. Make sure you're checking out the coaches previews, and we're learning more and more about teams around the state. So I appreciate everybody, your support. Like, share, subscribe, hit the dinger, everything like that. For all these guys, we appreciate you taking the time watching today. Everybody have a great day in the Lord. All you pitchers, throw some strikes, please. And hitters,
Hit like your 3 and 4 guys.
That's right. Nukes.
we'll see y'all next time.